The end has arrived. Andor Season 2 finally came out, and after waiting 3 long years for the final season of Star Wars' most prestigious show, fans are ready to get back into this world one last time to see the end of these characters and their storylines. A show that has now become one of my all-time favorites, regardless of if it had the Star Wars name attached to it or not, and I'm ready to dive into it every week for the next 4 weeks as we analyze each of the 3 episode arcs that come out that essentially are long enough to be their own movie. At the same time, when are we ever going to have the chance to do something like this again, at least for the foreseeable future? Andor Season 2 is one of the most anticipated seasons of TV in the modern era, and we don't get to have these moments as often as we want to. So sit back, relax, and prepare yourself. I'll do a video each week for the season if you all want to see it. To everyone watching, what was your favorite moment of this first arc, and which episode was your favorite? Let me know in the comments as we run through this video. The build-up to this final season over the last 3 or so years has certainly been a joyride for me in the sense that I've now watched the first season 7 times. I completed my 7th watch the other night, a day before the new season dropped, and just like every other time I watched it, it was so liberating to just go back and experience one of the best seasons of television I had ever seen. I know so much of that season like the back of my hand for the most part when it comes to the story and several of the characters. No one knew at the time that it was going to be this insane thing that it is now in terms of its popularity and how much we revel in its incredible quality. A season of television that tells such a simplistic story, but yet hones in on the important themes and commentary that Star Wars was created out of over 40 years ago from George Lucas. The build-up to Season 2 is some of the most heightened anticipation I've felt for a piece of media in the modern era. I've made a couple of videos regarding Season 1 already, as you see here, along with a fan trailer as well that I've put a lot of passion into, so you can go check those out on my channel. And my hype for Season 2 was thankfully earned, as it kicks right off getting us back into it with none other than Cassian himself, and I have to say, overall, his arc within these first 3 episodes was a little sluggish to get through, and it's probably my only real criticism of the first 3 episodes, but I still enjoyed watching it because the writing amplifies the quality enough to the point where even though the pacing of that storyline was much lesser than the other 2 storylines we follow, I was still fascinated to see how it eventually, as we will come to find, builds on the world that we know is coming years after in the timeline of when the show takes place. Cassian starts off by breaking into an Imperial testing facility as a test pilot for a new version of a TIE fighter called the Avenger, an alternate and honestly much more powerful looking version of the Interceptor that he is somehow able to escape with and find his way to another planet to land on, where he is meant to hand it off to someone else and his mission would be complete. I do appreciate that they made sure to have him control that TIE fighter in the worst way possible, in the sense that he has absolutely no idea how it works, even though he thinks he knows how it works as if it was just a regular TIE fighter. I also do appreciate that they don't reveal what planet he arrives on to go to in order to hand it off to his friend he was on mission with. Once we realize at the end of episode 2 that it is in fact Yavin 4, everything started to make sense so much more, and as we know, this is where the rebellion actually starts. He came across some bandit rebels called the Maya Pei, who are one of the many kinds of rebel groups in the galaxy, and they seemingly are also one of the worst. Again, I do think that this part of the storyline for this 3-episode arc did slow down the 3 episodes significantly, even though there is some amusement towards watching this rebel group not know what the hell they are doing. It also at a point did get a little tiring to see them do the same thing over and over again, and so I'm glad that episode 2 ended with us getting off that planet in order for Cassian to go and save his friends on Mina Rau, where they are held up by with the Empire. It is the planet where he and his friends from Ferrix were able to escape to and settle down in, and unfortunately, like most systems in the galaxy, this one is also now under Imperial control, at least as of the timing of when this episode takes place, while Cassian is off-world on his mission. It was good to see Bix, Brasso, B2 Emo, and Wilmon again after how Season 1 ended. The Empire arrives in order to check the people who are living there, and this is one of the areas of commentary and themes that the show gets into with regards to how we know that our main characters here particularly are not legally allowed to be there because they don't have proper visas and travel documents. Things get out of hand as the Empire pushes into their homes and they get found out about. Thankfully, Cassian comes back in time with his TIE Avenger and all the firepower in the world to deal with them as they all escape for the most part, besides Brasso, who sadly does meet his fate. His character was one that, going into the season, I didn't have high hopes for that he'd be able to make it all the way through. In order order to raise the stakes, you've got to lose some characters, and I think it kind of makes sense that he would be the first one to go. Lastly, with regards to this arc, I do want to address the scene, because it has sparked a conversation. So in the event that the Empire is coming into these places, there is always one officer who thinks that he has the best interest in mind to be an absolute creep and piece of garbage, and in particular, he found it best to pick on a character like Bix, and as we see, he did in fact try to sexually assault and rape her. Now, the thing that people are completely missing within the context of this scene is that it didn't actually happen, but they imply that it was about to happen. Bix says as much to another Imperial that the officer tried to do it to her, but of course, we didn't actually see it happen. The controversy with this is that people, or at least some people, believe it shouldn't be in Star Wars because it doesn't fit this world. Newsflash, the Star Wars universe has explored just about every single kind of dark topic that you can think of, so them going this far when it comes to exploring this adult-themed stuff is not completely out of order, and again, they didn't actually show it. If they did show it, I might be in agreement with those people, but they didn't go through with it. Some of these people complaining online certainly seem to think that they know that it should not be in Star Wars, and yet there are also some of those people who think that Andor as a show is not Star Wars at all, and honestly, I don't think that that kind of narcissistic person needs to have their opinion taken seriously, but I digress. To be clear, I can understand if you were not comfortable with that scene being there, but then I also don't want to hear another person say that it shouldn't be in Star Wars when Star Wars has always been about exploring really deep and dark stuff. This franchise has explored children being killed brutally, genocides happening, slavery of certain races, and the horrors of war with stuff like what we see in the Clone Wars. Sometimes you just have to experience the uncomfortable like we have been experiencing in this franchise before. The second storyline that we follow within the first arc is of course Syril and Dedra. Now, this storyline in particular with the first 3 episodes is one that I'm not going to spend much time on because quite frankly, I don't think that we get enough here to warrant having that big of a conversation. It's basically showing where both are in their careers along with the uncomfortable nature of their relationship. Dedra barely got away with her stint on Ferrix at the end of season 1 and is now being asked on to a major Imperial project involving director Krennic, who I am so glad to see be back, played by the great Ben Mendelsohn. Syril got a promotion at the Bureau of Standards in a role that he was opposite of when we first saw him at that company, and all of this simultaneously is happening around a very conflicted relationship between him and Dedra as they find a way to navigate how they get around his controlling and verbally abusive mom. That whole dinner sequence between them is something that definitely made me laugh, maybe in the ways that I was supposed to and not supposed to. What was probably the best part of it was that it arguably gave us the most relatable image that we have ever seen in Star Wars media when it comes to real life, as we see that after Syril gets embarrassed by his mother, he just plopped on the bed in the weirdest looking position and was just all embarrassed. Syril, my friend, we've all been there before. You are totally warranted to feel as embarrassed as you were. But that is essentially all we got from their storyline, so I'm hoping that we get more of their arc in the next 3 weeks other than just this stuff. Finally, we have the third storyline following the more political side of the show with Mon Mothma, Luthen Rael, and all the other complementary characters surrounding them with Chandrila and the Senate politicians. I think this was by far the best part of the first 3 episodes, and I think it is all due in part to Genevieve O'Reilly with her incredible start to the season performance-wise. Just after 3 episodes, I'm already seeing the seeds be planted for her to get a nomination at the Emmys. The way that she is able to sell every single one of the terrible things happening around her that she simply doesn't want is probably some of the best acting I've seen that is able to convey such terrible circumstances. Her daughter, who doesn't really like her at all that much, is being forced into a marriage that Mon didn't want. The relationship between her and her husband is straining even more now. Her other close relationship between her and a man that she thinks that she can trust but now doesn't know if she can is also potentially crumbling, and all of that combined gives us one of the more stressful and tragic storylines of the show. As we know, this is the beginning of her complete and full transition to the actual rebellion against the Empire and forfeiting her ability to be a senator. We know from the trailer that she is going to have a speech that speaks out against the Empire, and this episode is very clearly showcasing that that need for her to do it is growing and growing by the day. Genevieve is able to communicate this tragic fall from grace so well because as a politician, she's able to see how the systems are cracking and how they just don't work enough in her favor, to the point where she is going to eventually have to make a move that puts her into the full-on transition without actually having to hide it. Even when at her own daughter's wedding, she sees that people extremely close to her, like the gangster whose son is now about to marry her daughter, is speaking with Imperials, you just feel the tight knot on the rope that is closing in around her neck as she simply just can't take it anymore. That is why I also love that they included in that scene in the 3rd episode at the end where she is getting plastered drunk and tries to dance it all away as if to just completely remove herself from that world that is probably the worst place that she could want to be in right now. It's just such good storytelling the way they are doing it, and a lot of it is through dialogue, but it's also through facial expressions and physical actions. We saw a bunch of this stuff already from season 1 if you remember, and I just am so glad that they are continuing it here with her storyline. The other last thing that I want to mention, just to perfectly transition off of, is the point that what I also love that this show is so expertly doing is the filmmaking of each scene and sequence. If it wasn't obvious enough already, like with season 1, a good portion of the show is actually being filmed on real locations. Lots of Cassian's story here, as well as Mon's story, are shot in real places, but utilize CGI to composite some of the more Star Wars looking stuff into it. It makes everything look like it's real and lived in, regardless if the places are not actually real. The cinematography and the way that everything is lit is also beautiful. I don't know what lenses they are using on the camera, and I don't know what they did in post-production to make everything look so vibrant with color, but it is a contrast when you look at a lot of other stuff we've seen in Star Wars media recently. Media that has shrunk itself down way too much when utilizing something like the volume technology to help craft scenes that make stuff look way smaller than it actually should be. With the budget that Andor is on, it makes sense why everything looks as good as it does, and why sequences are able to be as grand and big in scale as we would hope for them to be. The one-shot sequence with Mon as we are first introduced to her is just really good filmmaking and crafted very well. Tony Gilroy and the people behind the show just know how to make everything come together, and I can't wait to see more of it in the next 3 weeks as we see where everything is being built up to in the final moments that we will have with the show. And there you have it. That's my commentary and analysis of week 1 of Andor season 2. What do you all think of my analysis of it? Leave your comments down below, and please be respectful if you disagree with anything I said in my analysis. Thank you all for stopping by my channel. If you want to see more moving forward from me with regards to film and television, and you enjoyed this video, hit the like button, subscribe if you are new here, and turn on that notification bell. I'm trying to build a community on here, and your support would be appreciated. That's a wrap, folks. I hope you all have a wonderful rest of the day, and I will see you all soon for the next video.